Welcome to Season 2 of Demming Chronicles, where we focus on issues that are current and trending. We speak to persons whose ideas and information can make a difference to our country. Our aim is to nudge the conversation in a direction that helps us solve some of our wicked problems. We intend to change the conversation because we believe that if we change the conversation, we will change the behavior. Welcome back, Demming Chronicles Season 2. And on this segment, we chat with PhD candidate Megan Sylvester. I know Megan as a sociologist. I know her as someone who comments on music. I know her as someone who comments on calypso. Megan, tell us, what brings you joy these days?
One of the most important things that I would say, and thank you very much, Dennise, for having me on this program, is my concern about national development, but from a cultural perspective. Because as you would be aware, I am on the board of TUPU as the Education and Research Officer. And that portfolio in particular, it becomes important to have that thrust for culture to be dominant in our society, to take our society to the next level. So that's one of the things that actually gives me joy. Working with a team of people who are actually able to be involved in this process. Yes?
Yes, but when you talk about culture, we seldom see culture as part of development. We see culture in a culture and creativity, we see it in very narrow context. Can you share some of your views about what really is creativity and how does that impact national development?
Well, in particular, what creativity means to me is an expression, an indigenous expression from the persons who are resident in Trinidad and Tobago, but also those who would have migrated and they may come back, let's say for the carnival period, any expression that speaks to who we are as people in terms of Trinidad and Tobago. What is our identity and how do we express our identity? So we have music, we have dance, we have visual art. We have, for example, we're moving into what would have been the carnival season. We have stick fighting, we have painting. We have so many ways in which we can be creative in this society. We have steel pan music, playing so many various instruments. But of course, our steel pan is more dominant at this time because it really is indigenous to us. And so it becomes important when I think about the impact in terms of national development is how can we foster, even within these COVID times, a regeneration of an expression of our culture. Yeah.
But the purists among us will say to you that expression doesn't have a dollar sign. And we need to link that creativity and that cultural expression with how can we earn income from both creativity and cultural expression.
Interestingly, because I am also a music researcher, most of the population should be aware, and even some of your viewers should be aware that there is research that speaks to the economic success of creativity and carnival as an indigenous festival. So if we look at the work of Keith Nurse and Joanne Tull and others who have said, listen, there are dollar signs that have been attributed in the past and can in the future be linked in a significant way to culture, it becomes important for us to tap into this. And more recent studies have to be done in terms of segmenting the various parts of our cultural expression to see exactly where the money can be made. And you know what, Dennise, as I think about the response to COVID-19 and how have creatives and how have persons within the cultural sector actually been affected and how have they then sought to earn a living in these times. We look at the work of Kenny Phillips through WAC Radio and WAC TV, and we look at what he has been producing since, March or April, May of 2020. And when we look back, we see that there has been a constant increase of shows being put on. People go to his studio at the WAC studio in San Fernando, and depending on whatever restrictions we have, you have enough persons in that studio to have performers be on that stage and get access to that international space. And so because it is linked to GoFundMe, that would have been one of the first ways in which performers and creatives could have started to earn a living, even within COVID times. So we see that there is promise and there is evidence to back up the contribution as well as the dollar signs for the creative sector.
But what are the systems and structures that we need to put in place that will help artists and creative persons thrive? What are the things that they need?
Well, in particular, if I look to the government providing funding opportunities, there needs to be more than just a handout. There needs to be a redevelopment of the importance of the creative sector, the importance of culture to Trinidad and Tobago, and also from the ministry that has that responsibility, a sit-down session, stakeholder sessions, not just to talk about what exists, but how can we plan together, creatives, members of the cultural sector, and the government. So we're talking about that tripartite arrangement to really sit to say, okay, what are the numbers? Who is performing? Where do we want to go? And so instead of it being a handout, it's a structured, strategic process of support. Because I am not, from where I sit, I don't think that people just want to get handouts. People want to be part of an industry. They want to be part of a working system. But they need a catalyst to come from that governing body.
So you're saying that the catalyst resides with the governing body. And oftentimes I would hear the governing body say that, but we had a symposium, we had, we spoke with people, what else do you want? So it seems as if there's some kind of gap. And I wonder if we could talk a little about what is that gap that exists between the governors who often approach this thing as handouts and the creative persons who want to continue to make a contribution, but they want to earn just as well as the doctor, the lawyer, the whatever else. What is the gap there?
Immediately, I would say that there is a perception that the cultural sector does not add value. And I think that that then redounds to the members of that sector. And when you feel undervalued, you are reluctant to engage in discussion at a particular level. So for the first thing I think that needs to be done is there needs to be a new view, perception, understanding of the role of creatives in our society. When creatives then see that they are valued, they then come to the table with renewed vim and vigor, as it were, to sit down and have a discussion. But we need to have all hands on deck. So when we talk about Trinidad and Tobago, we know that we have a Tobago Festival Commission or organization. We know that we have several organizations in Trinidad. We need to have the heads of these organizations, representatives of these organizations sitting down together as a group and then going with strategic approaches to the government. So as I said, it's not about cap in hand. It's not about waiting for handout, but it's going as a group, legitimately saying, listen, we can add value to this society. But of course, what becomes critically important is that in a society where oil, gas, and the manufacturing sector have been, larger than life, it becomes quite a challenge for that sector, the cultural sector, to be taken seriously. So that is also, there needs to be buy-in about the value that the sector can bring to national development.
Yes, and what I was just reminded of as you talked about the oil and gas sector and the manufacturing sector is that people do not see creativity in those sectors. Do you have a comment on that?
In terms of oil and gas?
In terms of creativity, is there creativity in the traditional areas? And how do we see that?
It becomes important for us to see who we are as Trinidadians and Tobagoans. How do we express ourselves? Because this is the point I was making at the beginning. We have creative expression and it comes out in so many ways. And so we have to start tapping into how do we express our identity? Because this whole issue about cultural sector and creativity is about various ways in which Trinidadians and Tobagoans express themselves. And so in every aspect of our lives, there's going to be creativity. The way that we approach, the way that we look at each other in society. So it becomes important to see, as I was mentioning, music. There are so many genres of music that are produced in Trinidad and Tobago, or that where we have persons involved. You're talking about the fusion music, you talk about calypso as mother music, you talk about soca and its derivatives, you talk about the chutney, you talk about the groovy, you talk about the raga, you talk about the parang soca. There's so many facets if we just look at music alone. But then we know that we have steel pan music, right? Then we know we have visual artists. And then, we have painters, we have drummers, we have drumology, and there's so much creativity. And so it becomes important for us to start looking at who we are instead of thinking that we are only one thing, which is, as I said, this heavy, unnatural reliance on only oil, gas, and the manufacturing sector. That becomes problematic in terms of our approach, in terms of looking at ourselves.
Yes. As you talked about the various genres of music, soca, and so on, I was involved in another activity, and the international platform did not have a category called soca, so that Trinidad music was then lumped under, I think it was lumped under reggae music. How could we ensure that that genre, soca, or whatever the genre that we have, gains international acceptance and even recognition? Any thoughts on that?
Indeed. What becomes important is hits, but hits are generated by production, meaning when an individual who's not from Trinidad and Tobago hears a song, here's a sample of a song, something that's linked to soca or sounds like something that is soca, they must be able to have access. So what becomes important for us is to take it to the engine room. We need to produce more, and we need to have our productive elements be readily available on the World Wide Web. Now, this may sound very trivial, but that is actually what allows for that visibility internationally. Reggae music and dancehall music has that visibility because of the productive element and the fact that they are involved in that international space in another kind of way. And so what we need to do, so we have our stars. We have our stars who have done that work, but we need to have more of that. So when we talk about the contribution of a Machel Montano, so you click on a video, you click or you do a Google search, and it's simple like that because somebody in Finland, somebody in Switzerland wants to access our music. They must not only just hear it and not know where to find it. And that is what becomes more important for us. But of course, that productive element is fueled by dollars and cents. And persons have to be, they have to have the funding. They must have it to be able to produce. So you see, it's a circle, it's a cycle, and it's very cyclical. But it involves all of the elements that I've been mentioning before: the government, the creatives, and other members within the industry.
What advice do you have for creatives in this time in which we've seen so much of their activities just shut down? 2021 is a new year, it's a new opportunity, it's a different opportunity. What advice do you have for the creatives and the typical artists, musicians, painters, dancers, and so on?
Keep performing. Keep performing. But keep performing and record your performances. So even if we're talking about, because of the conditionalities that exist as a result of COVID, if you're going to do a performance in your backyard, you're going to gather the required amount of persons based on the COVID protocols, and you're going to record those sessions. And you're going to get an opportunity to put those recorded sessions in the mainstream. Let people see you performing, because performers want to perform, but people want to see performances. And so this is not the time to get despondent, because if there was no COVID, this would have been the height of the Trinidad and Tobago music industry period. And so this is a time to continue doing that work. We started towards the latter end of 2020 as persons became accustomed to, this is the new reality. This COVID is here with us for a while. Keep performing, but make sure that you link together and you get performance spaces. So if you are unable to record where you are, get to studios. People are doing the recordings. I mentioned WAC earlier. Team up with other persons who are doing recordings and make sure that your content is there. So you have 2020 content, you have 2021 content, even in the midst of COVID-19, because it's all about visibility and accessibility to make a change in the creative sector.
And as we bring this interview to a close, Megan, if you had a magic wand and you could dream or take some action or cause something to happen or some set of actions to happen to change and make our industry or creative sector thrive, what would you do?
Interesting question. I think it becomes important for stakeholders to get together. That magic wand will be waved on all of the heads of those persons who have the responsibility and have the capacity to bring about change. But one of the things that I would want as I'm waving that wand is for them to start to respect the creative sector and to respect creativity. And there's creativity in so many ways. And we need to start seeing ourselves as creative people, firstly. And so as we do that, as I wave that wand, I'm saying, we are creative, we are creative, we are creative. And let's take that creativity to the next level. So that would be the first thing that I would want for Trinidad and Tobago. Government sees the creativity, the creators see themselves in a different light, and we all come together to make a fundamental change in this creative sector.
Thank you very much, Megan. And on today's program, we spoke with Dr. Axel Kravatsky, and his key message was that you can't have a single story. Do not paint everyone with one brush. He's very, very hopeful that in terms of governance, our country can change. In terms of selections of board and board performance, as long as those things are codified and clear, we'll be fine. And we also had an exciting discussion with PhD candidate Megan Sylvester. And her thing about the magic wand is that we all need to collaborate. Let's come together so that when the magic happens, it happens with all of us. She's very clear that once you record your music and you curate your music and you put it onto the internet or you put it onto your own page, you use social media, then things will change. But her key message to our creators is to continue to do. This is not the time to stop. Demming Chronicles, Season 2. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll be back with you next time. And until then, stay safe.